In about 2 minutes.
Mrs. Gill, because she's the only teacher this year.
You want me to bring
I
it?
used to teach Spanish 3, but I'm not teaching it this year, unfortunately. But I will get to go on the field trips with them.
We're just gonna move
so
a
I'll
table
have
over
to-
because we realized that.
To Louisiana, to Georgia, and everything. I want to say
Just a couple of things before we do get started. We do have an interpreter, so if you do need the support of an interpreter, that's available. And just so that you know, this meeting is also live streamed. And we'll be getting started soon. Right. Good evening. I want to call to order the Parent Teacher Advisory Committee for Community High School District 94. So we're calling the meeting to order at 7:07 p.m. on October 15th, 2025. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to restate the purpose of this committee. We serve as an advisory body to the administration and at times to the Board of Education. Our role is to discuss topics relevant to our school community and, when appropriate, make recommendations regarding procedures or policies. I'd also like to thank all community members for volunteering. Thank you for your time and your continued service to this important work. We're going to now proceed with roll call. Please state your name and your role for the record. I will begin, and then we can go to my left. Limaris Puello, I am the principal.
Penny Munoz, board member.
Megan Pay-Leitner, Director of Specialized Services.
Teresa Ocon, Family Outreach Coordinator.
Janet Hurtado, Dean of Students.
Sam Johnson, School Social Worker.
Jeff Anderson, School Social Worker.
Christina Sladek, teacher.
Amber. Parent. Debbie Kurgowski, parent.
Stephanie Kiesel, School Psychologist.
Nina Durkin, parent.
Megan Dusing, parent.
Raquel Gonzalez, parent.
Norma Gallegos, parent.
Rosalba Rodriguez, parent.
And Sonia Romanos, the interpreter.
Neha George, student.
Brittany Nelson, teacher.
Kristen Higgins, parent.
Dylan Galvan Carrillo as a D94 student.
Edgar Hernandez, student.
Gianna Branley, student.
Valeria Baines, student.
Isaiah Sylvester, student.
Olivia Zerko, student.
Jenna Wynn, Director of Culture and Climate.
Thank you. We'll move into the public participation. This portion of the meeting is where members of the public may address the committee on any topic related to the work of this body. Each speaker will have up to 5 minutes, and a total public comment time will not exceed 30 minutes in accordance with state law. Committee members and administrators will not engage in dialogue during this portion, but we will listen carefully when appropriate, follow up after the meeting. Are there any members of the public wishing to make comments this evening? We do not have any public comments, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. We'll be moving into the approval of the Parent-Teacher Advisory Committee meeting minutes for April 16th of 2025. In your packets, you have a copy of the minutes from our previous meeting. So please take a moment to look at the meeting, to look at those minutes, and if there are any questions or comments, please feel free to share those. Do we have any questions or comments related to the April 16th PTAC meeting minutes? If none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes for the April 16th, 2025 meeting. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. Yeah. You can. Okay. The motion carries, the minutes are approved. So we'll now move into our discussion topics. The first topic is for review and feedback, and this is our behavior intervention policy. This is a draft document that's going to be presented by Megan Paylatner, who's our Director of Specialized Services.
Good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, I oversee our special education department and programming, and one of the tasks that we get to have the pleasure tonight of looking at is, as a district, we put together policies and procedures that align with ISB and with school code on how we handle behavior interventions for our students with special needs. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over a couple different things, give you some background information on what that is. We'll review the draft that our school council has drafted up for us, and then we'll get some feedback for that, okay? So our outcomes, we're going to look at the ISB guidance. ISB is the Illinois State Board of Education. We're going to look at what they have asked us to implement as a school, and then review the policies that were drafted by our legal counsel. We'll get some feedback and comments, and then talk about what happens next to at the board meeting for possible approval. So back in October of 2024, these policies were updated, and so it was recommended by our legal counsel that we update our current policies so they align with the most current practices. So the guidance that we've received from ISB is non-regulatory, meaning they're not going to tell us exactly what to do. They're going to offer their guidance, but the school code is going to tell us what we should be doing within our practices. So it's meant to help the districts kind of come up with the fair, respectful, effective policies, how we can support our students with disabilities and any behavior challenges that come up as a result of that. It's based on both the federal law and the Illinois statutes too. So we've listed the statutes here as far as where in the federal law it comes in, and then where in the Illinois school code it also comes in, saying that we must have these policies and procedures. The guidelines really are meant to guide districts in establishing and then maintaining a committee such of everyone who is in this room to make sure that the policies and procedures for our students with disabilities have these policies outlined, and that their parents are informed and the students are informed, as well as the school. So once a year, we are asked to send these policies and procedures home to all families, and if a student is qualified initially for special education services, these policies also go home to them as well. If we move forward with this draft, then all families will receive a new copy as well within 15 days of it being adopted. We need to inform also the students, the most important part of this, of these policies and procedures, and that we explain what these are, and that the school personnel who work with our students are also aware of these policies and procedures as well, and ensure that obviously the parents and guardians can have these as well. The key points in the guidelines are, first and foremost, we use the least restrictive approach first. There's a phrase in special education called LRE, least restrictive environment, and that kind of goes through every practice we have, where we want to encourage and have our students access the general education classroom, staff, procedures, everything, before we start to restrict and take away some of those barriers for them. So meaning we are encouraged to use those positive interventions that don't limit a student's freedom or dignity. The more restrictive strategies should only be used when absolutely necessary for the shortest duration needed, as well as in a safe and careful way. The more intrusive an intervention is, the more caution, oversight, and documentation must accompany it. There is a lot of documentation we submit to ISB if we do have to go in a more restrictive intervention policy that ISB records for us, and then we also get monitored by them to ensure that we're not overusing that practice as well. Another key point in the guidelines is that we're understanding behavior through assessment. So if we are noticing as a team for our students with receiving special education services that there's an uptick in behaviors, we want to really get down to why that behavior is happening, what it is, and how we can manage that behavior with the school. And that's through a process called the Functional Behavior Assessment. It's where we use our tools here in the school to figure out why that behavior is happening and what can we do here at school to help intervene. If we decide that there is something that is triggering that behavior that can be worked on as an intervention, then we move forward with what's called the Behavioral Intervention Plan. And that's where the positive strategies are laid out, the support for the student, and also what to do in a crisis situation for that student. Another guideline would be the documentation, the rights and protections. Of course, schools inform parents in writing, which is called prior written notice, when behavior interventions are proposed or changed. We do need consent from parents to perform any sort of FBA and BIP on a student as well. We also add that to the student's IEP, the Individualized Education Program. And we also have what we call the procedural safeguards, where it's our notice to parents and families of their rights and how the process of special education works. And families are notified once a year, if not more, with those, and how they can dispute decisions, how they can appeal decisions, and so forth. The guidance also emphasizes ongoing documentation to review and adjust the strategies. If we put a BIP in place for a student and those strategies aren't working, it is our duty to the student to readdress that as the team to figure out what we can do to help intervene. The fourth key point is the roles, training, and oversight. So we are right now setting up this committee to oversee the behavior intervention policies, our practices, and ensure that consistency for our students and staff. Our staff also receive professional development and training in positive behavior supports, de-escalation, current use of interventions, et cetera. Behavior intervention consultants, trained in behavior analysis, also could support the school in designing and implementing some of those interventions as well. Of course, when we're talking about any type of support for our students with receiving special education services, we want to make sure that we generalize those skills and those interventions to just outside of that specific classroom. We want to make sure it goes not only within our school, but then also across the different settings our students access as well. Should we anticipate any obstacles, this is kind of a way for us to make sure that we're monitoring those and we know how to handle those and intervene whenever possible. Another key point in the guidelines is restrictive versus highly restrictive versus prohibited. There are certain things that schools are prohibited in doing. We always rely first on the non-restrictive, which is the low risk, verbal redirections, prompting, reinforcement, then moves on to a more restrictive. But again, as we get more restrictive, it's more limiting, and we have more accountability with the state that we need to account for if we go to a more restrictive policy or a restrictive intervention. There's also highly restrictive, and then of course the prohibited as well. So each of you guys have a copy of the draft. It says draft up in the corner. I know it's a long document. This was drafted by our legal counsel. Luckily, this is not a new thing for our legal counsel. They do this with many school districts, as every school district needs to have a policy that reflects this. So what they view as easy for them in putting this together, it might be overwhelming for us, but I do want to ask you if you could take a few minutes to breeze through these, to look and see how it's listed, if it makes sense. If there's any questions, we'll get into that. But if we could take about 5-6 minutes to look through this document, I would appreciate that. Okay, at this time, if anyone would like to provide any feedback or comments.
Do you have a red line version from prior to current that we could review?
So it's on our website actually right now, and it's also part of your students' IEPs as well if you have a student with a disability, and I can absolutely provide that. What happened was it was two separate documents that we have, and so based on the updates, we've now combined it into the one document and updated it with more positive behavioral supports and outlined the restrictive interventions better outlined in this one than our previous one.
So the red line is out on the website?
It's on the website, yep, that's our current policy right now. Mm-hmm.
It's just the current one, it's not a red line
Yeah,
version.
so
Correct.
you don't have a red line version.
No.
I need, if I could get both electronically, I'll bounce them
Oh, yeah,
and red line it.
Yeah.
I just want to see what's
of
changed.
course, yep, of course. Of course, yep. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. So there is a training called CPI Crisis Intervention Prevention, or Crisis Prevention Intervention, I apologize, that our only certified staff who have that training are allowed to go hands-on. While we currently have staff trained, we do not put hands-on students here at the high school. We've not had that happen in a number of years due to not only these policies and procedures, but our belief that we are in a least restrictive environment in the public school. Our students, we felt there are other strategies we could use before going hands-on, but we do train our staff in that. Our paraprofessionals and our special education teaching staff, deans, administration, to make sure we have that certification in case we ever needed to go that route. When that does happen, there are definite protocols that need to happen, and there's a continuum of interventions that need to take place before the actual physical restraining happens. Once that happens, there's documentation that I would fill out to submit to ISB, kind of talking about what the situation was, how long it happened, the interventions we've done prior to putting physical hands on students. But that's not a practice that we are currently doing here, as we believe there are other supports and interventions that have worked better for our students here in the public school setting. Yeah.
How many are CPI certified on staff at WeGo?
We'll have about a team of 20 to 25, including paraprofessionals. Mm-hmm.
Does this also apply for students who have a 504 plan?
Just students with IEPs. Mm-hmm.
I'm very happy to hear you haven't needed it.
Yes.
But you still have to be prepared for it.
Correct, absolutely. Yes, 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 very much.
What other specific training are your paras, teachers, et cetera, receiving?
Yep, so we do a lot of de-escalation training on top of that CPI training. We do a lot of classroom management, behavior management. The team that I work with, our school psychologists and social workers, help with training our paraprofessionals, especially on some of those classroom management things that they can get a hold of with collecting data on behaviors. We also use the social thinking curriculum in some of our classrooms too, I know. So kind of every time that a situation comes up, we rethink, do we need new professional development on the current students that are sitting in front of us? Do we need to reach out to find something new? So it's kind of constantly evolving about what kids are sitting in front of us to make sure that we are addressing all the current needs. Mm-hmm.
And the positive behavioral supports and interventions,
Yeah.
what is the power card?
So that's just a behavior management strategy. Some students benefit from a power card saying different phrases like, stay in your seat, or great job, you did great work. It's taking out that verbal cueing that teachers do with students and making sure it's not interrupting or intervening other than just using that power card to point to show them that positive behavioral intervention versus that verbal cue, if that makes sense. The hardest prompt to get away from is a verbal prompt, and we want our students to be independent and self-advocate, but if someone's always prompting them with their verbal voice, we're not giving them the opportunity to show their self-advocacy skills. So a power card is a good opportunity to just revert them back to that card, whatever it may be. It depends on what the student needs.
And when behaviors are showing, what is the first step before escalating into a situation? What is it the first step that you guys do when
So
a student is going into a crisis?
Sure. So it does depend on the student. It depends on the cognitive level as well. Typically, for our students who would show behaviors like that, there is a behavior intervention plan that the team does have to follow, and the steps will start with the non-restrictive all the way down. As social workers, usually on scene immediately, and school psychologists, sometimes even counselor. Whatever it is that that student needs, if they need a space away from the classroom, that can happen. If it's a redirection, that can happen. It just depends on what that trigger was, what that student needs, and what other supports, assistive technology-wise, that maybe the student needs as well. But there is a very detailed outline plan for each student that would need that type of intervention. Any other feedback or comments?
Do you have statistics on your restrictive interventions, specifically detentions and suspensions? What would be the root cause of that? Because if someone's in special education, my argument would be the right supports aren't in place.
Sure. Absolutely.
So just what would give rise to that?
So normally when it's talking about suspensions in this type of thing, we have done everything. We've not suspended unless it had something to do with weapons or drugs or bodily harm, something that's very serious that had to lead to, that violated our student handbook. If it's something that's not related to that, we're not going to do a suspension because that's taking the kids away from their free and appropriate education that they're entitled to. So when that happens, that's kind of, if something serious like the weapons, the drugs, or the bodily harm comes into play, that's when the team comes together and we reevaluate what are we seeing, what is leading to this behavior, what do we need to change. But very rarely has it ever gotten to that. Statistic-wise, since I've been here for 4 years, we've not had any that I know of that have come to that. The suspensions have come from different behaviors like fights in the classroom or fights like in the lunchroom, but those have been interventions that we've done with social work where it violated our handbook, but then when we brought back in, we did some restorative justice pieces with them to ensure that we're putting them right back in a supportive environment, they have the tools they need to access, and we can move on from that event. But something with as far as suspensions, it's not, I don't have the exact number, but I can look that up for you. But as far as I've known, since I've been here, nothing major has happened as a behavior to result in a suspension.
And does that exclude when a student is heightened?
No, we would never want to suspend if they're heightened. Right, that is kind of.
It happens because they're
Sure.
escalated.
So that's kind of where the team comes into consideration with the dean's office. Was that a result of their disability? If it was, we're not going to punish them for that. That's not something that is in their power to control. So that's something that's handled totally separately. That's not part of that suspension protocol. Yeah. As a team, we take into consideration the severity of the disability, the supports that are listed to make sure that are we putting them in a situation that they shouldn't be in? And if so, how can we change to make sure that, we're always looking at what's best for the kids and making sure they're in a supportive environment. As far as so these were recommended by ISB themselves, so most districts have something very similar to the practices that are listed in here. Yep.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion with this, this topic, we'll move on to the next item, which is an update on our cell phone policy, and it's going to be provided by Jenna Wint.
Everybody's favorite topic, right? So starting in the 24-25 school year, students were required to turn in their cell phone prior to going to the bathroom. This started because students were out of the classroom for longer periods of time. They were planning on meeting up, being a little more social, all of those things. So students turned in their phone and then were allowed to go to the bathroom. last spring, the April meeting, we discussed the potential for Illinois legislation to make some guidelines about cell phones within the classroom. And so there was a lot of discussion about that and what that law and procedure was going to be. And we, as well as other schools around in the area, have followed with what those recommendations are. So that included communicating to our families and students and staff last spring and summer about the expectations for student cell phones within the classroom. We provided families with letters, we did videos and put those on social media. Staff was provided with up to 3 options of what they wanted in their individual classrooms so that there were a minimal number of experiences that students were seeing throughout the school day. So the idea is that the students are seeing the same types of procedures throughout their day. Those were placed and installed into classrooms this summer, and students are now required to turn in their phone when they enter the classroom. So there are 3 options, really. There's one that's like a shoe rack that is by the door or on a wall. Students place them in, varying on the period. They have an assigned number. There's something in their middle of their desk, and if they're working at tables, and they turn it in there. Or there is like a locker storage type device. The informal feedback that we have gotten from students and staff is that students are becoming more and more focused. They have stronger peer interactions with each other, which is great. They're not tied to their phone and it's just endless scrolling. And they are engaging with the content more as well. I'm so grateful that we have a panel of students here who can provide more insight. I saw some head nods over here as I was talking, but any feedback related to it, like I know there was a lot of fear and anxiety with what that was going to look like. I think one of the best things is it's a building-wide policy, so you know that your friend is also in the same situation down the hall or on a different part of the building. They also have to put their phone away, so it's not like you're missing that text, but I will tell you, when the bell rings and they go to passing period, they are all really excited to see those Snapchat notifications. So they are very much glued to their phones on the hallway passing periods and lunch. But any feedback, guys? Was it as hard as you thought it'd be?
I would say it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. I know for having to put our phones away last year did help for sure, because we kind of were used to being away from our phones for a little bit. And I would like to say that ever since this change happened this year, I have seen a lot more student interaction. I would like to say so myself. I have never been I've been engaged in class, that comes pretty easy to me, but within my peers, I think my communication, not only with my friends, but with people that I would have not talked to in my class, has definitely increased this year.
I would agree with that, especially if you're taking an elective that you necessarily don't have friends in. It's definitely easier to make the class less awkward if everybody's kind of okay, well, we're all in the same boat, so we kind of all have to, figure it out together. But as somebody who is really nervous, I definitely like to have my phone on me, but I think it definitely has made me feel like I can get more done throughout the day. I feel more productive when I don't have my phone on me.
I think I to agree with what the other students have said. I always thought oh, I have great grades, I do my homework, why would I need the phone policy? But even in classes like study hall, it was just by second nature. I would always take out my phone and look at it. But now that it's required to have the phones put away, just having it physically away from me just makes me more productive and helps me get more work done and more time for my friends and a better high school experience on it.
Yeah, I totally agree with. I'm sorry. I totally agree with what everyone said so far. It's been a way more better, I want to say, process in the classroom where everyone's communicating more and everyone is getting down to do what they have to do, and it's not everyone is putting out be what's the new thing on Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram or something like that. So it's it's just more communication wise, which is really a good thing. It's all you could really ask for in a classroom, basically.
We have some teachers here too. Any feedback, teachers?
As a parent, I think I even shared with Dr. Puello that it was so nice to see the kids socializing during the events. Any events I saw kids giggling, having conversations, and engaging with so many other peers than before, than just sitting with their phones. This time I could see the big difference out there.
I have a question for the students without ratting anybody out. Has everyone been 100% consistent with it?
No.
No. Okay.
Students with 2 phones and they put one up and
Or like something else that they do is like they take their phone out of their phone case and they have the phone case upside down to make it look like if you could see it, because in the phone holders it's like if you have your phone up, you could see like the whole iPhone cameras. If you flip it, you can't see it. So it's a little.
So you guys are ratting out each
No,
other.
I'm just saying it's not me. It's
Are
not
the
me.
teachers consistent? Is every class consistent with enforcing it?
Not every. I want to.
I like their answer
Yeah, I know.
Listen, I want to say it's most of the classes, but it's more elective classes, if that makes sense. So like if it's not like a science or a social studies or a math class, because those teachers like hard on you for that. But if it's like art or like French or like foods, the teachers won't really pay that much attention. They'll just say, okay, put your phone up, and if they see it in the phones, they're not really gonna say anything.
Okay,
But
so
like,
you would say that it's not being consistently enforced 100% across the
not
board?
100%. I'll see like
Okay.
90%
Okay.
tops. Yeah, for sure.
How did you guys feel when there was the incident at school and you didn't have phones to contact parents, emergency services, or anything like that?
For me, I would say it was strange at first, because like, okay, normally we just have our phone right here in our pockets, but like when it happened, I was on the 3rd floor, so I'm like, okay, nothing's gonna like come up here that fast. So the teacher would let us go get our phone just to make sure if anything was cool. So like how it was, the bell went off, then everyone was like, okay, is this like a drill or is this like a real thing or not? So we had time, like probably like just 10 seconds, just go get your phone and then have to go in the corner and just relax. Well, not really relax, but like just like be prepared of anything, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I was also on the 3rd floor, and the first thing my teacher told all of us was to go get our phones because she was more concerned with our parents and what they thought about how we were, because she knows a lot of the parents. She's young. She likes to think about that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that was definitely her first thought, and everybody kind of worked as a team and like grabbed their phone. We did like an assembly line, and yeah, everybody grabbed their phones. So I feel like having them in the pouches like is helpful for classroom, but especially like during an emergency like that, if something, not knock on wood, never will happen, but everybody can grab it and it's easy to grab.
Yeah, but you shouldn't be going over and grabbing it, right?
No, I never
in
do,
an
I
emergency, what's the first thing the kids are told,
Yeah.
right? Hide or go under deck. I don't know. I'm too old. We didn't do those drills.
Yeah.
But I will be in the minority. I don't care for the cell phone policy for that as being one reason. As 2, academic classes I don't feel are the same as the electives. So I don't think the kids are as distracted, especially in certain academic classes versus others. But, in an emergency, that's the 10 seconds that you're standing up to go get a phone, and it doesn't take much. You didn't know that someone was there on the 3rd floor. Or not. I'm not trying to scare you.
No, I completely
Parents were
understand.
terrified.
I had the same reaction when I found out about the phone policy, and I mean, Ms. Wynn could talk about that. Well, not talk about it for me, but she was there when I spoke my mind and whatever. But yeah, I definitely had some concern about the world we live in today. What could happen, and you never think it's going to happen until it actually happens to you. But at the same time, I understand where you're coming from. But if obviously we can't just make it, Isaiah's class has to put his phone up, and, me and Valeria, we don't have to. You know what I mean? So I get your concern, but at the same time, I think that if the teachers understand, like, in a crisis, like, everybody rushes to go get their phone. I think it was easier for my class because we kind of sat down where the phone holder was because it was the safest spot in the classroom. But I don't know. I'm trying to explain what I think, but, I think having it up is a good thing, but also having the urge to go grab it in a situation like that is definitely greater, and then you then you get to somewhere safe. You know what I mean? Like I'm
Being flexible.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
I guess my counterpoint to that, though, is, and I mentioned this to Nina earlier, is that in an emergency, in a real emergency, you don't want 2,500 kids texting their parents. You want them available to listen to instruction and be able to do what the authority within the school or the authorities coming into the school are telling you to do. And that 5 seconds that you're going to your phone, you could miss an important instruction that saves your life. So that, to me, is, you know, I don't necessarily want your phone in your hand at that point. I want you listening to the adults.
And I would like to. My experience was different. In my class, we didn't get our phones. None of our students went to go get our phones in our class. My teacher, well, the door was locked. He just told us to go against the wall, and then the phones were in the opposite side of the classroom. It made no sense to get up and walk across the classroom just to get our phones. And I would say, to your point on saying during the emergency, we would like to contact our parents. At the moment, although I love my mom, I love my parents, I would want to contact them, I didn't really feel the need and urge to text them. I just kind of was thinking on what was happening at the moment. So I didn't really want my phone at that moment or felt the need to get up, walk across the classroom, go through the window, like through the door window just to get my phone.
Great perspective.
I also think that, not to bash the school or anything, but people throughout the school needed to communicate better with each other, because I think even like across the third floor, like listening to me and Isaiah's, you know, experience with the whole thing, we were in 2 different classrooms and 2 different things were happening. So I wish everything was more cohesive, and I wish the communication throughout the school with, you know, that entire thing was better. But that's something different that we can talk about another time. But yeah, that's also something to add to the phone thing and all that.
I think Valeria's point of every classroom is shaped so uniquely different, and where individual devices are installed versus on the table versus near the door. You know, we do want to equip our teachers with the ability to make those game time decisions, because going across and peeping through a window, not a great idea at that time. But if it's something that you can duck down and you're okay, that's also fine. So
I would say like our main goal for you guys is to be aware of your surroundings, right? And so like we do want students to be paying attention, like you said, like pay attention to what's happening and get the information. Like, do we need to hide? Do we need to get out of here? Like, what needs to happen next? And if we're just focused on like I gotta text someone, then I'm worried you guys are not getting that stuff. So I really appreciate you guys giving that insight.
Since we're getting wonderful, valuable insight from so many voices, do you students have any thoughts on how our handling of cell phones or this particular policy in the school could be improved?
I don't want to say like being improved. I just want to say like make it like a constant thing and make it like a longer lasting thing, if that makes sense. For sure, because for the opening of the new school year, it's been a change, and especially with like the kids and stuff. It's definitely been a big change, like socialism, like socializing wise and communicating wise and stuff like that. It's been a big change. So like just keeping it the same, and just I want to say like not being a little more strict on it, but like implementing it a little more to the kids, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd like to agree with like Isaiah's point. Like I've seen most teachers like implement having students put their phones away, but I have seen at least like one class, like gym class or something, like where the teachers just didn't really enforce it. So I feel like the policy is more effective if it's school wide.
Of the policy was because it's what we believe would be best for students. And you heard today how you guys that yourself said that you've seen more engagement, and what a parent would like to know and would like to hear is that their child is going to school and they're engaging with their peers, they're learning the curriculum, they're exploring high school like a high schooler, not spending time on their phone. And I know a lot of people like to just blame the phones they don't like to blame the phones for some of the concerns that we have and some of the social issues that we're having. but a lot of it does stem from that. I mean, the reason you kept the cell phones out of the bathrooms, we didn't talk about the negative effects. Like, why were they in the bathrooms with their phone anyway? What are they doing there? When there were, like, you know, bullying situations or fights or things like, I'm sure those instances have almost disappeared since that's happened. And it's really, really good to hear that we are going in the right direction. Yes, there's those situations where there might be an emergency, but if you're looking at the big scheme of things, that's one day out of how many did we have so far? Now, I'm not trying to discredit that one day, because that one day could be the only day that matters, but for the big scheme of things, I think that this policy is great because it really is showing our students that this face-to-face interaction is more important than this interaction. And it really does set them up for success. So as a parent, I love to see this policy. And I trust in the school that if there's an emergency, you will let me know. I don't need that automatic text from my child. I will know because the moment it happened, 3 different ways I found out. So I trust you guys with my kids.
Thank you. Thanks. So we'll move on to our next item, which is an attendance update.
So, average daily attendance, we calculate how often our students are coming to school. So, it actually kind of worked out. I ran numbers through the end of September. So that's like 6 weeks into the school year. It's a nice little break, the end of the month. So you can kind of see what our ADA, or average daily attendance, is for the past 4 years. I will tell you, having been here now for 10 years, these numbers are lower than what they were pre-COVID. We are still feeling those hits differently. Kids are excused for a variety of reasons. Kids would come previously sick, not feeling well, and now more and more parents are keeping their kids home when they just don't feel well. So these numbers are lower than what was happening pre-COVID. We'll skip the 2020 school year because we're all gonna forget that one happened, right? So right now we are at 92.45%, which is on track to be higher than what our current ADA, or than what ADA has been in the past. Like I said, it was about 6 weeks in. It's just a little snapshot. I'm excited about it going up compared to the last previous years. However, my takeaways from this is we have about 2,000 students. Increasing by just 1% is moving 20 students in the right direction. So some of those students who just might have a doctor's appointment, like, is that something that could be done after school? Is there something that could be arranged on a different day? Is it something that we all have a headache and you just kind of make your way through the day a little bit more? I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I do anticipate the number to go down. We are 6 weeks in. We just finished homecoming week and all of the fun festivities that go with that. Students are very excited about that week. They're very motivated to come. 6 weeks, we're in the honeymoon stage of a lot of classes. We haven't gotten into the real grind of things. So I do anticipate that number to go down. It also is getting really hard to wake up in the morning. It's darker and darker. Kids who are walking when it starts getting, today was a chilly day, but as it gets colder and colder, what that does look like. So I am aware that that number is high, but it probably will drop a little bit. But any thoughts or feedback on attendance? And I can go back to that screen for a second.
What constitutes a plus in the attendance column? Is that period by period for throughout the day, or is it if you're here first period, you're counted as present? Doesn't matter if you leave. You see what I'm getting at.
Yes, it's very complicated, and it does depend on, it's like you ask to pull one part of data and you have how many periods these kids missed, and then trying to sort through all of that times 2,000 kids times 10 periods a day. It does get very overwhelming very quickly. If they miss one period, it counts as a half a day. So
this represents full attendance days?
So this is like where our students are at right now. So I will tell you, yesterday, this week is thrown off with being off on Monday. Yesterday, every student received an email with their attendance up until the end of like the week before. It includes their unexcused, their excused, and their tardy numbers, just as a snapshot of where your student is. I think it's important for parents to know that we are monitoring it, we are paying attention to those things, and I think it's also important for the students to know that somebody is checking up on them and somebody does really care about what that number looks like. We do have an attendance PLC. We are doing stuff with the attendance groups aligned to the strategic plan to really try to motivate kids to really, we're coming up with a cute tagline, but like strive for 95, like 95% of the time you are here, you are in school coming. So we recognize that things happen, kids do get sick and they miss a couple days, but I mean, 9 days out of a school year is 95% attendance, which when you start missing very quickly, it does add up. And some kids end up with the flu or something and they miss 2-3 days. Something happens, 2-3 more days. It's very quick. So trying to make it known that that's our goal, that we want kids here. I think we touched a little bit about that positive peer connection and kids feeling part of this community and part of this school and having those interactions that somebody's going to notice when they are missing, I think does then kind of help lift them all up a little bit to be like, I need to go to school, like somebody's counting on me.
Does being field tripped out also count as a whole day of absence, or is it just like?
No, because
Okay,
you're
good.
reporting to school, you just are not in your normal classes.
I have two things. So at one point, I think we talked about a future topic possibly being like figuring out where or what student barriers were happening in terms of attendance. And I don't think we ever received that. So if that could be something we could look at, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. And then at what point does a student become flagged or is an alert sent out to like a student services personnel or representative for that student to be maybe like checked in with or, some sort of like one-on-one check-in?
Yeah, so it's totally like case by case is what I will tell you. Every day there are up to 2 calls that go out via robocall. If a student has not come by den, there is a call that goes out. There's also a call that goes out between 5 and 6 o'clock at night if your student missed 1 or more periods. So that's automatically happening. We have a system that's called green passes, for lack of a better word. So if a student is absent, the teacher sends them down to the attendance office. They meet with one of our deemed specialists to talk about where they were, have that conversation, and then get sent back to class. I do run consecutive absence reports as well as notify the deans and dean specialists of kids who are on our chronic truancy rate who have greater than 25%. We looked at that data at the beginning of the year, and then I'm cross-referencing students who were on that chronic truancy rate greater than 25%, along with students who are on track or worse than where they were last year. So kind of doing that on a month-by-month basis as well, to then get what is going on. We have family outreach who will call home, who will do a home visit. Any part of student services would agree that they do that as well, to figure out what is the problem. If a kid is skipping school for multiple days, there's something going on. So what can we do to help that family and figure out what we can do to get that kid back on track as quickly as possible? Because every day adds up. And like when you finally decide to come back to school after 13 days, like you have no idea what's going on. You've missed half of a unit, an entire unit. Like, how are you ever going to feel like you can catch up? And then that number is going to get worse because when I finally do show up, then I feel like I really have no context for it. And it's like, why am I going to try to come back tomorrow? So case by case, working with the family to figure out what they need and what the student needs, and if we can help in any way to get the kid here.
I think one of the things that it was discussed in the April meeting was about maybe students being the ones that are helping parents do the registration, and sometimes maybe they are having the power to change the phone number and maybe those messages or calls when they're absent getting to their cell phones instead of notifying the parents. Can that be a red flag to get?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a concern. I will tell you, I personally send out tardy emails to every student who has greater than 8 tardies on a weekly basis. And the amount of emails that I get that bounce back that are undeliverable. So that is something that we want to work forward, like want to continue to work on, of like calling parents, trying to get an updated email. We want to inform you, but like we need you to, like, can you check your email? Is this the right one? Is this accurate? Because we are using technology and different tools to make it accessible. I will say parent engagement, we did have a Power School training information night for parents who wanted to come to show how to get on, how to check your kids' grades, how to check their attendance, so that parents could understand what that process is and be part of it.
I still see during registration time that many parents are still coming in person to do that. Can that be offered to those parents here in school? So that
Yes.
way that they're sure that, the information it's put in correctly, that, the right email and the right phone number.
Mhm.
I think it's very important for those parents to make sure that they have those supports when they're coming in person to register their children, because they're here for a reason. People who can do it over online, they're probably not need all that support.
Absolutely.
This one, how many parents attended that Power School?
We had a small number, but there was a lot of things going on in the community that week. And so we kept that in mind, but we have plans to like Zoom it as well and offer it another time.
And that was the week of, that was that curriculum night?
No,
Or that
it was just
hosted separately?
separate. Mm-hmm.
Also, something else that we've been doing, we've been calling like all the parents, the 9th grade parents, and checking the phone numbers. Like if the phone number that we have registered is the student phone number, then we try to call the emergency number just to get a hold of the parent so they can come in for parent-teacher conferences and get like to see the teachers. So we've been doing that too.
We'll continue on with discipline numbers. So this is a graph that just describes all suspensions year by year. The blue is ISS, or in-school suspensions. The red are OSS, or out-of-school suspensions. And then the green just represents the total number. Obviously, you will see that 2025, 2026 is from the beginning of school through September 30th, which this is lovely, but I don't think it does a lot for you. So what are our biggest issues for suspensions? So I know this is kind of hard to read, but I will tell you, the first one is tardy to class. Students who are not arriving to class on time. And that can be from first period, that could be fifth period. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily every day first period that the student is arriving late.
Wait, they get a suspension if they're late to class?
Once they have hit 14 tardies in school for one day. Mm-hmm.
For one day?
Mm-hmm.
How can you be tardy 14 times if there are 10 periods?
The suspension.
One day of in-school suspension, once they've hit 14 tardies.
14 tardies total gets a one-day in-school suspension.
Mm-hmm.
Jenna, the slide that you had before, was
Yes.
that incidences or number of students? The 96?
Incidences.
So it could be same student multiple times?
Yes.
Okay.
Typically is.
For tardies specifically, they reset at the semester.
I will say we give kids kind of a chance at the beginning when they're like finding their classes. Like that first week, we're like, all right, we're giving you a chance to find your classes. Now, the second week, you should know where you're at, you know? So we are kind of like lenient towards like the beginning of it, and then.
And obviously, like a student who takes the bus and their bus arrives late, they do not get them. Like, there are other circumstances. So tardies to class is our number one. And then the second one is truant to class versus truant all day. So there are students who are just skipping various classes. Part of our attendance PLC is focused on how high those numbers are during the lunch periods. So students are choosing not to go to PE, for example, and then they find their friends in the lunchroom. And as you can imagine, with 500 kids in a lunch period at a time moving in and out, they find little ways to blend in. Not any of these students, of course. Stop playing. So those are our biggest ones, but those definitely account for the largest number of suspensions that we have. So if we look at out-of-school suspensions specifically, that is the last few years. We currently have 9 out-of-school suspensions that have happened this school year. And the top 3 reasons for those, and this is across all of those years. Number 1 is for fighting. Number 2 is disobedience, disrespect, which also I included gross disobedience, disrespect. And then number 3 was inappropriate behavior, which is more general, so I can't talk specifically about what was exactly under there. If we look at our in-school suspension numbers, tardy to class was 1,060 total suspensions. And then those truancies were after that. This is from 21-22 to present day. Present day is of September 30th. So at 40.8% of our in-school suspensions have been because of tardy to class. 28.6% for truancy to class, 16.8% for truant all day. So if we look at suspensions for tardies versus total suspensions from that year, this is what that data looks like. This year we are very high, 58.33 for tardies. Yes?
Do you have statistics on tardy to the first period versus tardy to other periods during the day?
That's a great question.
Well, because
yes.
I have a child who likes to sleep.
Yes, they all do. No, Ms. Payleitner and I actually have a tardy cart that we are now calling the tardy party. It's at entrance 1.
We don't want to make it fun, though.
We don't want to make it fun, but we try to be very positive and have little conversations with students so that they are held a little bit accountable of why they are late. I do run numbers every single morning. I am provided with how many students are late, and we sometimes are like, ooh, it was a heavy day today, and that might be 103 kids for the day. And then sometimes I don't even want to say the wrong number, but we've had under 70 for sure, which across 2,000 students is pretty good. We look at first hour absences. I look at DEN absences, all of those things individually as well as whole day absences. So I monitor that on a daily basis as well. But, you know, a student might pick up 6 tardies in a day. We have, yes? They go to one area of the building, which is entrance 1, and the idea behind that is they are seeing the same person, giving them the tardy pass. We help out in the morning, first period, but so people notice them. It becomes very much like, you've been down here a couple times. That person, that dean, assistant can notify the dean specialist and be like, so I've seen this kid 3 times already today, and it's 4th hour. So making those part of it. We do work through a continuum of consequences, which include lunch detentions, you know, try to get them at number 5, at number 8, potentially an after-school detention at 11. We have conversations like, today's a freebie, but the next one's gonna be a lunch detention. And then every time Ms. Payleitner says, don't do it, we don't like those. And so we really try hard to encourage kids like to stay under that. I do send weekly emails to every student and parent if they have 8 or more. This was a very big motivational factor. If they got 15 or more, they couldn't attend homecoming. So I was letting everybody know week by week of where they were at, because we want students to be involved in those activities, but the expectation is we want students to be in class every day on time. So it's just, we're trying to do it. we reset at the semester, like we had previously mentioned, but we do have those who are who like to be there a lot. So trying to work with those individual students, like Ms. Munoz brought up kind of earlier, is like to figure out why. Like, what is the deal? If, your student likes to sleep in, I do too. However, that's not an option. So working through, like, is it just first period? What can we do? Can we set your alarm? What else do you need? But why are you're in one class and you're supposed to move down the hall 6 other classes and you are late? What's going on? So.
Say something too.
Yes.
I love how the one about the 15 tardies you can't attend homecoming. I love that. I don't know why. Like my freshman year, I came into high school. I saw that. I'm like, all the kids are gonna go to homecoming because y'all want to go to homecoming, right? If y'all don't want to go to homecoming, just get more than 15 tardies. But like, that's a good thing. So it's like it's holding them back. Like it's holding the students back from enjoying their high school if you don't want to go to class, basically. That's a good thing, in my opinion. That's like a really good thing.
So, I'm sorry, you said it was 14 and then it's an in-school suspension. And then does that clock reset? And then you get 14 more? And
So
then
it keeps going, and once they hit 16, they have to meet with a dean specialist every single time they are late. Every time. They have to get their pass individually signed by that person.
So of those in-school suspensions, do you have the data on how many of them are repeat
customers?
offenders?
I can definitely pull that.
Okay. Just because it would stand to reason that maybe it's not working, that if you're coming late to class, that maybe the appropriate punishment is not you don't go to class.
Yeah, is it a full day in-school suspension?
Mm-hmm.
Because the point is we want them in class.
in school learning.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm totally on board with a lunchtime suspension, with after school, stripping them of extracurricular activities, after school, I mean, early mornings, yeah, well.
And we do work with kids. We have kids who, and I'll speak on your behalf, like has practice after school. So like that's not gonna work. So like he's not in trouble.
Take something that means
But
something away from
Why
them.
wouldn't it? Because then if you don't get to start in your next game because
But a
you
lot
weren't
of
at
times
practice.
their coach or individual sponsor will put their own type of consequence on them as well. And then we accommodate them and like, okay, you have to come in early or something like that.
And I will say that when we like meet with kids about tardies, it's usually like we'll try to figure it out with them, right? Because they're having so many conversations before the suspension happens that it's like we've had these conversations like, oh, are you really only tardy for the mornings? But I will say that most of those suspensions are kids that are late throughout the day, multiple times. And we're not talking like, I'm a minute late. We're talking like 15 minutes late to class. Now we're trying to avoid the class. And then I think the hope is in school that they have the opportunity to reach out to the teachers and get the work done. So we're providing like that support. Like it's, like if they're gonna have a test or there's an important lesson, the teacher's allowed to take the student out of in-school suspension and bring them to class. So they are allowed to get that access. But if you have someone who like never shows up to science and they're like, hey, take me out of in-school suspension, the teacher may be like, well, how about you do the work in the class so I know that you're actually, do it while you're in in-school suspension, so.
So over 40% of them. So the focus is working to create different interventions and other things that are going to result. That's definitely a focus. So trying to figure out how many of those are repeat offenders, what we can do individually, how many of those carry over from year to year, stuff like that. If you have any ideas.
A Starbucks or a Dunkin'.
Starbucks or a Dunkin'.
Would really
Take away
cut
fun
down.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't make them go to class. And take away the fun things.
I think they should be able to bring your parent to.
I have gotten a few emails with that.
Yeah, I feel it's a big responsibility that they have to have by the time they're in high school. So I feel that, and I agree that there should be consequences for that because it's a pretty bad habit, procrastination is just not good. It's a very bad habit just to avoid, and I think we should have these kids ready and prepare in that area of being responsible.
But like then again, it's like it's the students who really want to have it. If you don't want to go to class, that's on you. So like having in-school suspension and all that, it's gonna be disciplining them, but they have to have that mindset too. So okay, I want to go to class. I want to get better in work or like better, like have like a better future outside of high school. You gotta go to class. So like some teachers, like, I mean, I'm not gonna say some. Most of the teachers like say, okay, this and that, how you wanna evaluate your life after high school. They have to like think about what I'm gonna do or like how I'm gonna like better myself by going to class, basically.
Could we also like talk to the parents about time management in the morning? Because I think that a lot of the time, like I have a lot of friends who, not to bash on any parents, I love all you guys with my entire heart, but I'm being serious, but my mom, I love her to death. I hope she's not watching this right now, but you know, sometimes we have a hard time getting up in the morning. And I think a lot of my friends deal with the same issue of like, you know, my parents don't move, my car's behind my parents' car and I can't move my car. How do I get out of that situation if my parents won't, you know, work with me in the morning? So I think also like checking in on like the parent situation if the kid is like chronically late in the at first period, especially because I think a lot of the time like kids who don't have access to a car or don't have their driver's license, it's hard for them to try to take accountability for something that's not really their fault. And I mean, if it is their fault, then obviously like that's something way different. But a lot of the time my friends are like, my mom like just would not get up. My mom would not get off the couch to drive me. Like that's why I'm late. So I think that something is something that we can like figure out too.
Jenna, one thing I was thinking about with those numbers, and I can't remember what previous years were, but I know this year with the policy of having our doors locked, has that contributed to an increase in tardies this year? Because I know like in the past when teachers would have doors open, kids would just walk in, you know, after the bell and kind of unnoticed and slip by. Well, now that we have to keep our doors closed and locked, it's a lot more obvious when kids are in after the bell. So has that contributed, do you know?
I don't know that we'd be able to see the correlation. I think we can make some assumptions on it. But I know more kids are like, oh, the door's always locked. Like, and they'll say little tidbits like that. So I think it does, when the class has to be stopped and the kid has to be let in, it's a much bigger deal for the student to be late than it had been before. Cause like the doors were open and that was just part of like our culture here. So they slipped in a little bit or it wasn't as noticed. And so.
I like it with the doors locked now.
As a takeaway, I think that if the students are like repeating getting tardies, they must not care about going to class, and I think that locking the doors makes them more obvious, and like they probably just don't care.
Like I said, tardy to class is definitely accounting for the most for this current year. And then out of school suspensions for the current year, we have 6 for fighting out of the 9 total.
And I'll throw in just one thought from the last topic that we're on. Very recently, I pulled a student from in-school suspension. When I came up to the student, I said, would you like to get out of here for a little bit? And they said, yes, please, it's awful. Now, the other thing that I will say is there have been times when I've worked with a dean specialist, and we are both in agreement that the student would be better to get them into class as soon as possible and not keep them one more day out. So I've appreciated the ability to collaborate and try to figure out what's going to be best with each individual student. As far as figuring out, you know, what is the best to do in this topic, in my current state right now, my job has almost nothing to do with discipline, and so I thank God that I don't have to deal with that. It's a very difficult topic, but I'm grateful that we have a lot of voices in here to understand that. But I thought at the very least, I think it's important to understand that there's an effort with where we're at right now to try to figure out what will be best for each student. And I think I'm one of several social workers, but we have the privilege of working with the Dean's Department and doing our best to collaborate and give our insight on this. This is my opinion on it. Now, I'd never try to take their job away from them or try to push them in positions that is their authority and not mine. But I'm just grateful for the collaboration that we have in our efforts to try to help students.
Thank you. So, as we look ahead, are there any topics committee members would like to suggest for discussion at our future meeting?
I would like to see a discussion on the cohesiveness of social media presence amongst the different clubs and activities. And I understand that that might be a really large undertaking, but it seems as if each club and sport and whatever, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems as if, as an outsider, they are all individually managed, oftentimes, from what I hear from my kids, by students. And if you follow any of the clubs and sports, you might think that only 20 kids go to school here, because you see the same kids and the same faces in every single thing. And we are such a diverse community with so many different things to offer that it would just be nice if there was some way to talk about oversight of what is actually put on social media, if it is attached to something that comes from the school, to make sure that we have a broader depth and representation of all the different students that go to this school. Excuse me.
So I kind of just touch base on what you said. So there's this group of kids in school right now. It's called, we have like a organization, like a little group. It's called What's the Word We Go, and I'm a part of that, right? So it's like we go around the school, we ask like what's going on, like what's the topic, like what's like a new thing, like what's the old thing that people are not really talking about that much. So it's like you say how you want to see like something. I want to say like what's going on, like different parts of the school, like with different cultures, like different type of people in the school. Like that's a thing that's gonna happen. But stop working. There you go. So it's like it's a good thing to like reach out to each different part of like what's going on from like different parts of the student. I don't know how to like word that sentence, but like that's a good thing to like see or like to like be known about and like what's going on. So like to be noticed, if that makes sense. So yeah, for sure.
So I can speak from experience running 2 clubs. One of my clubs, our social media account is run by our director, and a lot of clubs, I don't know for sports, but a lot of activities, they have their student officers run the social media accounts with, usually with the sponsors kind of support and kind of, insight and kind of guidance. My other club, I run that social media account. But I see what you're saying. It does seem like it's the same few people. Maybe that's something we can talk to Mr. Jennings about and see what we can do from like an activities standpoint to try to make it more cohesive. Like I know we have the We Go Activities account that is kind of all encompassing, but that doesn't always catch everything. So yeah, I mean, we can talk to him about that and see what.
Well, it just seems like even you could be a part of a club, but if you're not in that group of people who are taking the pictures and posting the pictures, you'll never see yourself represented in that club ever, which then I think discourages more people from joining them because they already are put into a class system within those clubs. And so then they feel like, well, I don't fit in there, so I don't want to be a part of that anyway.
And another topic that might be that while I was thinking and reflecting about the tardiness and how students are maybe not showing up for certain classes. I know sometimes many students might be not seen with a diagnosis. Maybe they're failing not because they're the obstacle might be that they have maybe a learning disability that is being undiagnosed. Many kids have been diagnosed with dysgraphia, dyslexia, and they don't even know. Is that the reason why maybe the workload when it comes to a certain subject is becoming very overwhelming instead of showing up for class? Is there a way we can bring up this topic and maybe look at those students exactly to see if they're struggling academically and that's the reason why their tardiness, and maybe that way we can help, support them better instead of just focusing on why they're late, or maybe the root of the problem, seeing why are they not showing up to that class, or why is it that are they struggling emotionally, financially, who knows, many, millions of things can be out there. It's just a suggestion and something that I would like to see the district focus on that group of students that are struggling already.
This is something that actually Sam worked a little bit this summer on, is looking at certain students who have high absence rates and trying to figure out if it's certain subjects, like it's for avoidance, right? Like, is it because I'm not a good math student? So how many of these kids are doing that? So the data got real crazy real quickly, but it's definitely something we are talking about within our attendance PLC.
But I think you do kind of speak to this bigger kind of concept of like our students need to feel that sense of belonging here at school. And when you have academic difficulties, social emotional difficulties, that sense of belonging isn't felt. So how can we as a school work together to help students feel that sense of belonging?
Along the lines of sense of belonging, Fire did it every Friday. He'd ask questions of students coming into the school. You guys would do a short video, and then the parents would get to see it. It's on social media. It was fun, lighthearted, and I think it established a really good connection between administration and students, where it's not so authoritarian, where it was more where students felt open joking around with their principal on Friday when he asked a goofy question. I think it would be nice if that kind of cohesiveness could be brought back in some way, shape, or form. That could be a topic for.
Oh yeah, for sure. But like, it's still here, but it's like still currently going on. But the person who's running it doesn't like really, I want to say, post as much. If that makes sense. So like.
Well, the person needs to post more.
Exactly. Yeah.
The social media.
And then there's a different host every week, so I think, not anything towards you at all, but principals have things to do. So I feel like it was easy for Dr. Dreyer to do it in the morning because he stood out there anyway. But as a new principal, I bet there's things that you could be doing instead, and more importantly, like taking care of the schools. And I like how they change hosts.
Principal should stand out there on a Friday. Why not?
Well, I don't know what she's got going on in her life. I don't know. But I do agree. I like the Friday Fun Day. I'm on it a lot.
Oh, that's what it was called.
Yes, Friday Fun Day. I am. I'm on it a lot. Me and Mr. Jennings are buddies like that. But
We recorded last week, didn't we?
Yeah.
Wasn't that last Friday?
Yeah, we did.
It should be out on Friday, this upcoming Friday.
It's awesome.
The next one. Yep.
Oh yeah, stay tuned. You'll see me.
Stay tuned.
Doing that one.
How come I'm not surprised?
Exactly.
Any other topics for future agenda items? All right, if there's no further business, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn the meeting. All those in favor, please say aye. Okay. Anyone opposed? All right, the motion carries. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. We appreciate it. I hope you have a great evening, and grab some Jimmy John's on the way out. Thank you so
you.
much.